Pastor Brunson. They made up this phony charge that he's a spy, and he's not a spy. He's going through a trial right now, if you call it a trial. They should have given him back a long time ago. And Turkey has, in my opinion, acted very, very badly. So we haven't seen the last of that. We are not going to take it sitting down.
All right, so what does that mean? And what if this pastor in question, Pastor Brunson, who could be facing 35 years in jail, in fact, for hard labor over the next 35 years, we want him out like now. They say no, at least for the next 35 years he's staying put. What would happen if he were suddenly sprung? Would that ease the crisis? Because there are plenty of other aspects to this crisis. Let's get the read with retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Colonel, always good to have you. What do you think? Tomorrow the guy's released, then what would happen?
Well, I think, as you just alluded to, there's probably a number of other issues that would immediately take that place. And I think that you're seeing kind of the results of the law of unintended consequences kind of imposing itself. And frankly, I think a lack of our ability to see how things fit together at the strategic level on a number of cases, certainly involving Turkey, was one of them. All
right. Now, what are our options here? A lot of military types have been telling me, Colonel, and you're pretty prominent in that field, so I'll get your thoughts on it. They get worried when they hear the saber rattling about kicking Turkey out of NATO, especially when it cozies up to the likes of Russia and or China. What do you think?
Well, that certainly is one of the big concerns that we need to have, is that we don't want to be so proactive on using the sticks of diplomacy, whether that's sanctions, whether that's military threats, or any of those kind of things, even some of the trade disputes that we have both among our friends and our adversaries. If we push too far, we're actually going to push some of our friends into areas we don't want them to go. And that's certainly the case right now with Turkey, with China and their Belt and Road Initiative. You also see them moving in the direction of both Iran and Russia. And so they are pursuing their own interest. And sometimes they're not just going along with ours. And when they see us keep pushing hard in all these directions, that gives them more incentive to move together. And that could work against our interests.
You know, while I have you, Colonel, of more immediate worry to me, as worrisome as Turkey is these new reports that China, forget about the fast moves on trade, but what they are doing on the military front, dramatically beefing up military spending, and according to the Pentagon, setting their sights on U.S. cities for potential strikes. I mean, no big surprise that is something they're considering, but I mean, this was far more involved and far more along than I thought. What did you think?
Well, this actually goes part of where we have to be careful about the law of unintended consequences, because we wanted to push China really hard on the economic front. We want their help on the North Korean front. And then we're actually pushing them pretty close in the eye on the Taiwan issue. And see, China sees all this together. They're not independent parts of them. They see it all from one strategic view. And so since we have indicated that we would go to Taiwan's defense in the event that there's ever a war there, and China is unequivocal, and we're again today very open about the fact that they would go to war over the Taiwan issue, it makes sense from their perspective that if we're threatening to intervene, then they say they would attack, then they have to prepare in targeting ways for that. But we don't need to push things in that direction, because that would be horrible for our interest. And so we can't push too hard in that direction.
All right, but we can't let them just willy-nilly go about doing this, much as we have in past years let them go ahead and militarize all these islands that they don't own in the South China Sea and elsewhere. What do you do about that?
Well, but I mean, you say we can't allow them to, but actually we don't have the power to stop them to unless we're actually willing to use force. So what we have to do is to ensure our interests are taken care of and be very clear and communicate that if our interests are ever crossed, we're willing to use whatever means to take care of them.
Isn't that our interest? In other words, if they militarize these out, and they're quite right, we can't stop it. It's not our area of the world, but technically it's not theirs either. So,
well, that's certainly an area of dispute. But you have to look at what is the actual threat that they represent. And I'll frankly tell you, it's not that great, because those things are just rocks in the water that can't move, and we could knock them out with missile fire from long range should we ever need to. So they're not that big of a threat. They're more of an upfront kind of,
they're a regional threat, right?
So.
If you're Japan, you get nervous. You're South Korea, you get nervous. But you're saying there are other things to get nervous about, right?
There are other things to get nervous, and that's one of the lower ones, because we can handle that, and both us and our allies.
Okay. Colonel?
So I think it's important not to overreact, is I guess I'm saying.
All right. What do you mean overreact? All right, Colonel, always good seeing you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.